We live in a world full of decisions, some that lead us to peace and others that may bring us suffering. Have you ever wondered if the suffering we experienced could be avoided? Today, we're going to be discussing how, by following Bible principles, we can reduce unnecessary suffering in our lives. And the best part is, we can enjoy a better life drawing closer to Jehovah. So, let's start reading an important lesson from the psalmist here in Psalm 119, verse 127. It reads, "That is why I love your commandments, more than gold, even fine gold." So we notice that the psalmist was aware of God's commandments, but not just that. We notice the expression, "How I love your commandments." They are my treasure. So it's not enough to just know them. It's not just about reading them, but it's about deeply appreciating them. And that's a significant difference, right? It's like when a doctor gives you specific instructions to improve your health. Change your diet, exercise, get enough rest. Even though it may seem hard at first, if you follow his advice and see results, you begin to value it. You realize that these changes, although uncomfortable at first, are improving your life. Similarly, God has given us laws, Bible principles that protect us from suffering, that keep us away from the consequences of sin, and lead us to a better life. It's not a coincidence that when we obey what the Bible says about things like lying, stealing, sexual immorality, or violence, our life improves. The scriptures protect us from emotional, psychological, and spiritual damage. For example, think about the benefits of honesty. If you avoid lying, even though it may seem like a small lie won't cause harm, you realize that honesty improves your relationships, your inner peace, and keeps you away from consequences that could damage your reputation and your conscience. That's why the Bible is exhorting us to hate evil and love good. When we learn to see things as Jehovah sees them, we start to truly appreciate what is good and reject what is harmful. Okay, that's one of the first steps. Let's take a look of the other step in Psalm 119, verse 128. "Therefore, I consider every instruction from you to be right. I hate every false path." How can we hate what at first may seem fun or even pleasurable? That's a good question, right? Here's the key. Think about the consequences. It's easy, really easy, to fall into temptation when something seems fun or enjoyable in the moment. But if you stop for a second and think about what's really at stake, that reflection can help you avoid unnecessary suffering. That's why the Bible at Galatians 6:7 reads, "Don't be deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he'll also reap." So friends, let's be honest. Sometimes we fall into behaviors that seem harmless, but if those behaviors align with what the Bible considers evil or wrong, the consequences can be devastating. Disease, family conflicts, loss of trust, or even the loss of a relationship with Jehovah. Imagine giving in to a temporary temptation, whether it's in the area of morality, lying, or violence. It may seem exciting at first, but have you stopped to think about the long-term consequences? Illnesses, broken relationships, the guilt that follows you, and most importantly, how does Jehovah feel when we choose something that he considers harmful? If we think for a moment on the consequences of certain decisions, maybe an unwanted pregnancy or even a serious disease, and these consequences aren't just physical, emotions can be deeply affected. The pain of losing self-respect, of damaging relationships, of ruining our peace of mind, we notice that it's not worth it. And that's why the Bible is clear. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, but the who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. What are we sowing in our lives this week? Okay, and now one of the most valuable principles to avoid unnecessary suffering is listening to Jehovah and learning from the wisdom he gives us. Let's read together the final verse of this consideration at Psalm 119, verse 130. The disclosure of your words brings light, giving understanding to the inexperienced. 133. Guide my steps safely by your saying. May nothing wicked dominate me. Many of us have made mistakes in the past, some small, others big, but we are not condemned to fall into the same mistake over and over again. If we learn to listen and apply Jehovah's teachings and advice, we can avoid repeating the same errors. That's why Proverbs 22:3 tells us, a prudent, a wise person sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it. So, friends, Jehovah's wisdom teaches us to see evil, recognize it, and stay away from it. Jehovah's wisdom gives us the ability to avoid many unnecessary pains. When you are young, sometimes it may seem like everything is allowed, that life is meant to be lived to the fullest, and there are not limits. But divine principles give us direction. When we listen to Jehovah and stay away from what harms us, we choose a life of peace. Think about those who don't listen God's advice. Many times they live with painful consequences for not making wise choices. Okay, friends, if we choose to listen Jehovah, we don't just avoid unnecessary suffering, but we also multiply blessings and live in peace. That's really worth it. In conclusion, in summary, we've talked about 3 key points to avoid unnecessary suffering: loving God's commandments, hating what is evil, and listening to Jehovah. If we apply these principles in our daily lives, not only will we avoid unnecessary suffering, but we'll also live with greater peace, joy, and closeness to Jehovah. So, friends, that's really important and significant. We want to invite you to reflect about these points. What things can you change in your life to love Jehovah's commandments more? How can you hate evil with greater determination, thinking about the consequences it brings? God's wisdom is here to guide and protect us. We just have to listen and put it into practice. Thanks for joining us in this consideration. May Jehovah bless you with his wisdom and direction to live a life full of peace without unnecessary suffering. We hope to see you in our next broadcast, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and see you next time.